Hello and welcome to the Find Focus podcast. This is a show for people who care about deep work habits, the productivity power law, and all issues related to technology. Have you ever struggled with fear of missing out or feeling anxious? Well, that's exactly what we're going to help you with on this week's show, where you'll learn to manage your mind, gain control over your emotions, and beat your anxiety and fear of missing out with speaker and certified life coach Alex McLellan. Hello, Alex. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Martin. Good to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you are helping people with social anxiety?
Yes, so I'm a therapist, so qualified therapist and coach and involved in CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's my background, and I've been doing that for about 2 years as myself and my own business. Before then, I worked for a number of different coaching companies, so dating coaching companies, as well as others involved in social anxiety. And that was all very much part-time whilst working a rather stressful job in media sales in London, where I live. So after sort of 5 or 6 years of doing that and living this sort of split personality life, I decided I'd make the leap, as it were, to doing what I think is most important and where I can be of most use, which is as a therapist with people who have anxiety issues, suffering from stress or problems with emotional resilience and not feeling like they're able to handle their problems, whatever they are. So that's a brief history of who I am and what I've been up to over the last few years, I think.
How did you get into this topic?
So when I was working in sales, my mother got quite ill. She got Alzheimer's disease, which is quite tricky to deal with for obvious reasons. And there was a lot of other stuff going on in my family as well, and it wasn't so good. And I was having a pretty bad time of it. And I started drinking quite a lot, and it wasn't so good. So eventually, I went and got help for it, which is probably the best thing I did, because I was drinking. I couldn't afford to keep on drinking at the rate I was, which was actually the thing. So I got myself sorted out, which was the first step. And I then sort of carried on living fairly selfishly, I think, for a year or so, because, I'd managed to get a grip on my own personal demons, but I was still very much focused on what was going on in my life, because it was a big thing, and trying to make sure that I was still succeeding at work and all these things. And eventually I sort of got quite sick of it and just got a bit sick of the life I was living and not really feeling like I was doing anything worthwhile. I was just making rich people richer and not doing much else that was good. So I was casting around and really thinking about what else I could do. And I remembered going and getting help, and that just really spoke to me. And they say people become therapists because they want to go back and help themselves, and I think that's probably quite true. I was still sort of reacting to wanting to go back and save myself from all the mistakes I'd made. So I went and trained in a form of therapy called IEMT, or integral eye movement therapy, and then got really interested in psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, and then that led into even more sort of refined coaching and led me to where I am now.
Yeah, great. Like I recently did in some research about internet addiction, and I found out that there's a lot of emotional signs of internet addiction that relate to what you're doing, especially like social anxiety, depression, isolation, some kind of mood swings, fear, loneliness, which is often connected like to the use of social media. Have you experienced that like with your clients and in your profession?
Yeah, absolutely. Not in the sense of addiction as in they will be on it for hours and hours and hours a day and not do anything else and neglect themselves, which is a marker, shall we say, of someone who's got a serious internet addiction problem. But social media, absolutely, and mobile phone use, absolutely. I mean, those two are things which are, it's an interesting area clinically when you're looking at the research, because the clinical research and the literature about overuse of mobile phones could not be clearer, in that people who have high usage of their mobile phones more likely to develop depression, more likely to be stressed, more likely to have sleeping problems, and sleeping problems are then indicative of other mental health disorders, more likely to become socially anxious. And actually some very interesting research, which has been done in the last few years, is nothing to do with that, but it's about how much people like each other. And very interesting that, if two people who haven't met before are put into a room and they're there to have a conversation, if there is not a mobile phone on either of their persons or present in the room, then that conversation is quite good. Whereas if just an innocuous or a mobile phone is introduced, one that isn't theirs but is just visible, the two people rate themselves as liking the other person much less, significantly less, than if there isn't a mobile phone. And that's very interesting. So yeah, mobile phones are not so good. They are good, obviously, if you're in an emergency and, you need to do this, that, and the other. But I very frequently speak with people who, because of their mobile phone, they've always got work with them. And that's just raising their stress level because it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the evening, and then they get a work email that they feel they have to check. And so they're constantly thinking about it, and it stops them from resting properly. And then they're struggling in lots of ways. I was speaking with the directors of a company, a large company that I can't name, but it's a well-known candle brand, which is very popular in the UK and America. And the directors of their European and Middle Eastern areas decided to get me in to speak for them. And one thing they all did was took their mobile phones home, and they were working till very late at night and then coming back and bringing work home with them. And one of the things I really had to fight for was just to say, look, after a certain time each day, switch off your mobile phone and get off at the email, because it's gonna kill you. Perhaps not so dramatic as that. But on social media is interesting if you're reading research about it, because there's a lot of research which has found that social media doesn't seem to have had an impact on people's baseline levels of esteem or prevalence of anxieties. And in fact, in marginalized and highly isolated individuals, so people who've got anxiety problems and who live in the middle of nowhere, for example, social media is actually quite good for them because it does connect them with people that they may feel, are similar to them, and that can be good. But actually for the majority of people, and if you look at subjective experience, shall we call it, the experience of the individual, there is no doubt, at least to my mind, and in some studies out there, that overuse of social media and this overexposure on social media does cause a lot of problems to self-esteem, to people's ability to think rationally and think clearly, I think, and just on their baseline levels of stress and anxiety. It's not nice if you're having a conversation with somebody face to face and their phone keeps on popping off and they have to check it because they need to see if somebody's liked their photo on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. So no, in a long rambling answer to your question, social media, I see it a lot. I see the effects of social media and a lot of modern technology pretty much everywhere.
So yeah, just what's the best way to deal with it, like from your experience?
So from my experience, I always recommend people to do a couple of things. The first is to have at least a couple of periods throughout the day where they turn off their damn phone, where I always have my phone off during breakfast and dinner, because I think, there's important times of the day, should be eating, should be focused on something. I want to have a conversation with my girlfriend over dinner, for instance, so I don't want any distractions then, and I think that's important. I also think it's important to limit how much time you are on social media, because for some things it can be good, but you've got to ask yourself, well, what are you really gaining from it? You get to see photos that you don't really care about and maybe feel mildly jealous about it. Well, that's not really good, is it? Or you get to read about the latest thing to irritate you, and some people, for instance, are absolutely angry about everything, it seems, these days, and social media just becomes this big echo chamber of the same opinion as you, but getting more and more and more outraged. So it's not good to expose yourself to that too much. So limit your time on social media, and obviously one of the easiest ways to do that is with something like a website blocker, and I know obviously you do a very good one for reasons actually we could maybe talk about, because I think the way yours works is very interesting and very good. But it's absolutely essential that you're using one of those as well, just so you can get stuff done, and so that you're not filling yourself and your day with, quite frankly, stuff which can be toxic to you. Not saying it's all doom and gloom and you're doomed if you decide to go on Facebook or Twitter or Google something. Not at all. But it's just about having an approach of moderation, just everything in the right amount. And I think that if you can limit the amount of time you're on your phone, and you can limit the amount of time you're on social media and sort of those sorts of news websites, is for the best. And it's amazing how quickly people begin to feel less anxious and less stressed and generally just a bit more content day to day when they start doing that.
Yeah, what I see is if I talk to people one-on-one, and it's the fear of missing out. Like I just want to check Facebook. Maybe there's something going on, and oftentimes it's just an irrational fear, but it's still a fear, and the science clearly shows that this fear is real. So how do you deal with this fear?
Stop checking. Stop checking. because here's the thing. Okay, well, so it's natural that we want to be doing a good thing all the time, shall we say, right? And it's also natural that we don't want to miss out on something. And I can remember times when I was growing up, and definitely before social media is what it was today. And your friends would be going out to see like a gig or a band or something like that, and you wouldn't hear about it. And then the next day you'd feel like, oh, damn, I missed out on that. That was upsetting, or that sucked. So fear of missing out, it is a real thing. How you stop it is twofold. For me, don't have it to begin with. So don't be checking, and ask yourself, okay, well, if someone's checking their phone or thinking, oh, what am I missing out on? Well, why aren't you enjoying where you are now? That's a much more interesting question to me. What is it you want to be different? What would stop you from, what are you worried about missing out on? And actually just to ask yourself these questions. And usually what happens when people do that and they start going down that rabbit hole, I say, is they start going, okay, well, why am I unsatisfied right now? Why do I want to leave this situation to go to a new one? You'll actually find you actually find something which is much more interesting. You'll find a good answer to those questions, which means that you can stop yourself from having that same fear next time, because it may not be a fear of missing out. It may be a fear of doing what you're currently doing. Or it may be a fear of living the way you're currently living. If people are, I don't think anybody's expecting an invitation to the next red carpet event to land in their Facebook inbox, right? That's not going to happen. So what are you afraid of missing out on? Ask yourself that question and why you're afraid of missing out on it. And you'll be able to engage with that much more rationally. And then you're less likely to have that fear of missing out, because then you realize, actually, I'm just being a bit, I'd like this to happen and I can create that here, or I can just enjoy where I'm here instead, or something like that.
Yeah, I think for me, and I talk about this a lot in my webinar, it's about, creating your own life. And like all this social media is like just all this stuff you consume passively. But if you go out there and actually decide what's really valuable in life, and then try to create these opportunities and go out there and make them happen. I think Carl Newport talks about in his deep work, like the any benefit approach, where, of course, as you said, like Facebook can be useful, but is it the most useful use of your time?
So. And often it's not. I'm only on it because I have to be for business. If that makes sense, because you just can't have any sort of business running without it. It's interesting, actually, what you say there, and about, you look at Facebook and what's happening out there, and actually look at yourself and go and create that. And there's an element of truth in that. But also, what people have to remember is what's on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram is a highly edited form of that person's life. Self-esteem issues come in here when you compare yourself to people you're similar to. There's no point in, say, you and I comparing ourselves to Christian Bale or Leonardo DiCaprio, because they're too different to us. They are too different. They live the movie lifestyle, millions of fans and wealth and all these things. I don't get jealous when I see Christian Bale at a party. But if I saw a friend who I went to school with live in this amazing house and wife and going to all these amazing parties, I'd feel a bit bad about myself, because I think I knew him when he was 12, and that's where Facebook can be quite damaging. So when you see So when you see these people living an amazing life and you've got the fear of missing out that you're not having that too, well, that's a highly edited form of that person's life. There's all the bad stuff that you don't see. And a friend of mine once said this, and I found this to be fairly accurate, is the more people post positive things on Facebook, the closer they are to having a really big problem. The closer they are to it all going wrong. And it's true. There is something in that, I believe.
Do you have any particular story where you noticed this in your life?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yes. So it's a few years ago, and I was probably, I was really not in my best place, I think it's safe to say. And there was a guy I went to school with, and I'm not going to name him because you could probably find him on my friends list, but he was a guy I went to school with, and I didn't know him that well, but we were in the same year and would say hello to each other and that sort of thing, but never really thought anything of him. And I just saw he'd posted up and he'd just bought this amazing house somewhere, and he had a pretty girlfriend, and I didn't have anyone at the time, and I was feeling very alone and very isolated, actually. And I just remember looking at this going, I've done nothing worthwhile. And it was just, all of this is going wrong. And I was looking at him, I was looking at this just going, we were the same. Like we were so similar. And yeah, I say so similar. Obviously, we spent time around different people and all these sorts of things. But, we were the same age. We went to the same school. We got similar grades. I remember that. And I just remember thinking, how am I doing a job I hate, living in a flat in London that I really is too small and is way too expensive, without anybody to go home to, just feeling miserable. And I'm looking there, and the sun's out, and the house he's just bought what's going on? And I remember just absolutely feeling like the lowest form of life on earth at that point in time. And I think a few people will feel that from time to time. That's the time I really remember thinking I should probably stop spending so much time on Facebook, because the worse I felt about myself, the more time I was spending on Facebook. And it was only when I sort of stopped that I could then start to look at myself a bit more, which is a scary thing to do. But obviously when you start doing that, then you actually start making good changes.
Okay. So you said like you're still using Facebook for your business. So how are you dealing currently with your Facebook usage? Like, do you how do you regular, like, how are you using Facebook?
Oh, okay. Interesting question. And not one I actually really give much thought to. What I tend to do is, obviously because I have a Facebook page for my business, Practical Anxiety Solutions. But I've got a Facebook page, and usually people have sent me messages during the night or something like that when my phone is away. Here's a big tip: sleep with your phone away from your bed. So just sleep with it. But people put it on charge right by their bed, and that's just nuts to me, because you're trying to fall asleep and there's WhatsApp messages or Facebook notifications going off, and it's like, no, just move it to the other side of the room. And if people say, well, I use it as my alarm clock, buy an alarm clock. You can get one for £10 or €10 or whatever it is. So what I do is I'll get up in the morning, and I'll have my breakfast, and I'll sort of write a to-do list out for the day, and I'll sort of have the first hour or so of my day technology and internet free. And then I'll get sort of Facebook and emails out of the way. I'll go through sort of different groups and stuff and see if people have posted anything relevant for me. And then after that, I just tend not to have it open now. I'm at a point where it's just not something that I go on. I go on it when I've got a notification from somebody about something, which is actually, how we're speaking now. You sent me a message and I got that notification. So I'll go on when that comes up during the day, but it's not something that I do. As soon as I've gone on there and replied to the thing I've replied to, I just close it. But I've managed to train myself into that. What I started doing was just having rigid times when I would use it. And obviously this was years ago, but I was using website blockers throughout the day to stop myself from going on it. That was especially useful at work, because I was at one company where if they caught you on Facebook at all during the day, you were in big trouble. So that's where it really came in. And then more and more, I just carried on using blockers, and then I didn't need it anymore. I switched laptop and I just forgot to install it. But I found I didn't need it anymore, which was nice. So if you're thinking about reducing it, I just plan in 3 or 4 times during the day, which for me would be a lot, but plan those times in, and those are the windows that you're checking Facebook and doing what you want to do on there. But the big question as well is, why do you want to go on?
Yeah.
What do you get out of going on? That's the question I'd always be asking myself is, well, what am I actually getting out of being on here?
Yeah,
and sometimes it's just waste time. Yeah,
that's great. Like I found for myself, I do not have like Facebook even on my mobile phone anymore. No email on my mobile phone. I do all the work that I need basically on my computer. That's why I created my software, because that's where where I'm online. But just forcing myself to actually boot the computer and just having it in my office where I can still access all the sites and all the services and contact all the friends and people I want is so helpful, because it's not so close anymore, and that's really helpful for me.
No, I think it'd be helpful for everyone. I really do. It's if you can shut the door and contain the madness, then then that's a good thing.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about developing social anxiety and deal with it that you would like to share with our audience of our people like suffering from social anxiety?
Well, I think we've approached it in a really tangential way, and obviously we've been talking things about technology, and which I think is so important. And I hope that the message has become clear throughout it. But in case it hasn't, I'll make it very clear now, and I'll make it explicitly clear, especially if you've got social anxiety or stress. And you're wondering, what can I do about this? There's a few things. People will try and tell you that you need to feel confident or that you need to feel motivated. And it's about feeling better. Well, it's not. It's not about feeling better. That's the biggest lie the self-development industry sell people. It's about doing better. It's about being better. It's about performing better. It's about doing the things that you would do if you were better. And that's the first thing I'd always ask people is, if you didn't have the problem, if you didn't have social anxiety, or you weren't overly stressed, or you had the time that you wanted to have, or you were doing the job that you wanted, if you had what you wanted to have, essentially, what would you be doing? And a lot of the times I ask people that and they go, I don't know. Because when you have a problem, all you're thinking about is how awful it is to have the problem. So that's never going to solve anything. And people will tell you, yeah, you just need to ask the universe to help you out, or whatever it is, or some awful thing, manipulative, exploitative thing like that. What you need to do is you need to think, okay, if I didn't have social anxiety, what would I be doing? Well, I would do this. I would do that. Okay, now how can we work towards doing that sort of thing? And to really go into detail on this, okay, well, if I didn't have social anxiety, I wouldn't care what people think of me so much. Big thing. Okay, so what makes you care what other people think of you? How do you know when people think well of you? What do you use as that judgment? And really understand that about yourself. And I said that specifically because that goes back to something like Facebook and social media, because a lot of the time, well, I know I'm feeling good about myself and all that when I'm getting a lot of likes on Facebook photos and all these things. But so you identify that, how you know when you're going to be better, and then you plan to do those things. And whenever you're in a situation that you're not happy with and you're not feeling comfortable with, well, why? What is making you be there? What are you saying to yourself? And really understand that. And this is primarily what I do with people. And if people want to learn more, they can go to my page and see videos I make and all these sorts of things. But as a general overview, the most important thing is to understand, okay, well, how will I know when I'm better, quote unquote? How do I know I have my problem now, quote unquote? Move away from the actions that tell you have a problem now and move towards the actions that tell you don't have a problem anymore. And if you can do that, by and large, you end up solving the problem. And it is a bit more complicated than that. And it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So prepare to work at it. But if you do, then things tend to get a lot better, and they get better quite a lot faster than most people think they would, actually.
Okay. How long do you think it will take to get better?
Oh, well, that's a very, very hard question. And I couldn't possibly give an accurate answer because it's so subjective.
Okay.
It's so subjective. I've worked with people and we've done an hour together and their whole life has changed in an hour.
Wow,
I've worked with people where I've seen them for once a week for 8 weeks, and it's only on the 8th week where they're at that place where they said, I don't feel like I have that problem anymore. So it was really, really subjective. I think it's just about doing a bit better every day you can, if that makes sense. Don't try and rush it, and don't think, well, if I'm not better now, then that means this or that's the other. It just means, okay, well, am I doing something today a bit better than I did it yesterday? And if you are, then that's great. And I think you should just you should be your own yardstick. I think you should be your own yardstick.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think there's so much advice coming on us, like from all different kind of sources, like blog posts, internet gurus, Facebook, like sometimes people pay for this to get this information in front of you. Sometimes you stick it out yourself, but it's so much. And I think in the end, it's about us making our own decision. Maybe you do not want to be like a famous actor or something like that. Maybe you just happy, having a great life with your family or whatever, like building a small business, whatever it is. And that's
exactly. I think the big shame about the industry is it sells the big sort of live this amazing lifestyle. And there's a guy who I'm not going to mention, but he is one of the most insidious, exploitative, awful people I've seen. Who he does a lot of videos, and he targets them at young men, usually with poor credit. And he's usually got like an incredibly nice, expensive car in the background, or pretty girls around him. And if you think about it, you probably know who the hell I'm talking about. God, I really
here in my garage.
I'm not saying anything. No, I didn't know that name, but that's another person for me to go and find. No, but as in, we get sold this whole super attractive lifestyle, tons of wealth, tons of this and that and the other, but actually that's not going to make you any happier. I think it is time that people go, you know what, just what would be good for you? Maybe that is just going, I'd just like to go out and meet some new people, and that's what you want to work towards. You don't feel like you have to be the next Brad Pitt or whatever it is, or whoever. I don't know. I'm really bad at choosing these examples, but you just figure out what's right for you and you work towards it.
Okay. What final thoughts do you have to help people motivate, to get a better life, to get rid of anxiety, and creating this life that we are talking about and developing our own vision?
Okay. So, you know what I do? Get really good at understanding what's going on in your own head. And I think a nice way to do that is just have a little, sleep with a notebook beside your bed, and every night before you go to sleep, just think about what you've done well that day, what you haven't done well that day. Think about some of the things which maybe are causing you stress or anxiety, and pick those apart a bit and go, okay, well, what happened here? Why was that so bad, as opposed to something else? And really get used to thinking and picking that stuff apart, because you'll see where you make mistakes, and that's really useful because then you can fix it. Lose your mobile phone. Just get rid of it a couple of times a day. Just really get good at isolating yourself from that. Get good at isolating yourself from a lot of social media. I wanted to actually say before we ended, and this isn't obviously a direct promotion for your blocker, but I looked at it, and I think it works really well, because obviously somebody has to type in. You make it hard for people to go to the site they're trying to access. And the reason that's very good is because usually the urge to go on that site is an impulse, and it's a very strong emotional impulse. And that's why people will just find a way around very quickly. And what I like about your blocker is that it introduces a time gap. And usually during that time gap, people's logic and reasoning kicks in, and then they can do the action which is better for them, which is usually avoid the site or whatever it is. So I really like that. And I think that's a good tip just to expand everywhere. Because let's say you're trying to stick to a diet, right? And then you get the craving. Well, you haven't eaten enough that day and you're getting a real big craving, and you walk past and you see a chocolate bar. Well, instead of going in and buying it straight away, just think, okay, I'm going to count to 20. And if I still want it as much by the end of 20, then maybe I'll go get it. But just introducing a little time delay and making it a bit harder for yourself to do the bad thing is usually a good idea as well.
Exactly. That's why I do not have any suites at my house that are accessible. So just having like the gap between me going to the store, buying whatever I crave in the moment, is just like it's enough time to get conscious again and say like, yeah, it's not that important. I care more about my health than the short-term craving.
Yeah. And make it easy for yourself to do the good things. You know, I'm leaving my current gym, which is 10 minutes away, to join one which is 2 minutes away. So so make it easy for yourself to do the good things too.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And please tell us, how can people find out more about what you do, and where can they find out about? I think you mentioned your website. So what's it?
Oh yes. So my website is www.practicalanxietysolutions.com, or people can go to my Facebook page, which is Practical Anxiety Solutions. And on my Facebook page, you'll see sort of videos and blogs and that sort of thing when I decide to put them up, which is slightly less frequently than I feel I should. But there's lots of advice videos and things on there, or you can go on my website and find out a bit more about me and working with me and my approaches on things.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for a great interview, Alex.
And thank you for having me on.